We've reviewed completing the square, and now we're going to learn how to use the completing the square method to rewrite the equation of a circle in center radius form. So if you look at this first example, you can see that we have x squared plus y squared minus 8y minus 5 equals 0. So this is certainly not in a center radius form, and just even looking at that, I know the radius of a circle can't be 0. So I'm going to follow a few steps, and you're going to hopefully write these in your notes as we go through the example together. And the first is to move all of the constant terms to the right side of the equation. So what I mean by that is I see that there's a minus 5. I want to move that over, and I can't just put negative 5 on the other side, but I know that using the rules of algebra, I could add 5 to both sides of my equation. And we said we call that the addition property of equality. So now we have x squared, oops, sorry, it's hard to write the exponent too, plus y squared minus 8y equals 5. All right, so that was our first step. The second step is that we're going to put all of the variable terms with x's in one set of parentheses, and the variable terms with y's are going to go in another. So what I mean by that is pretty easy. We're just going to put parentheses around our variable terms. So I've got parentheses, and then I'm going to put my x squared in there. And then I still have addition here, but now I'm going to put my y squared minus 8y in parentheses. All right, now all of that is still equal to 5. So now we have x squared plus y squared minus 8y equals 5. That hasn't changed a lot. We just put two expressions in parentheses. So now we're going to complete the square, and there's actually in this one an instance where we won't need to complete it, and we're going to balance the equation. So when you see this x squared by itself like this, and there's no like x squared plus 2x or x squared plus 4x, there's no need to complete the square. We can just leave x squared alone. So I'm going to write x squared, and I'm going to move over because I know I need more space. But we're going to leave x squared alone by itself over here. In fact, I can even go ahead and take it out of parentheses since I don't need to complete the square. So then I'm going to go over to that other expression where we have y squared minus 8y. So y squared minus 8y. This is where we need to complete the square. So this is where we need to ask ourselves, what could we put, how could we make this a perfect square trinomial? So I'm looking for a third term here that will make this a perfect square trinomial. So remember before we said we can take the middle term, divide it by 2, so I get negative 4y. We can drop the y because we're really dividing off the square root of y squared. So I'm going to use negative 4, and then I'm going to square that number to get positive 16. So I'm going to add positive 16 in the parentheses. Oops, my 6 is kind of funny. Let's see if I can fix that. All right, so we're going to add positive 16. Now, we can't just go adding positive 16 to the left side of the equation unless we also do it to the right. So when I say balance the equation, that's what I mean. We've got to also add 16 to the right. All right, so we're almost done. I know this is a lot of steps, but we have one more step. And in the fourth step, we're going to factor the variable side and simplify the other. So we start with x squared. X squared is still all by itself. There's nothing we need to do. It's just x squared. But when we get to this expression, we do need to factor this, and we need to just use the rules of factoring a perfect square trinomial. So we know that we can take the square root of the first term, which is y, the square root of the last term, the square root of 16, which is 4, and then the sign of this middle term. So since it was minus 8y, I'm going to write minus here. Close parentheses, squared. Oops. So we end up with x squared plus y minus 4 squared, and that equals 16 plus 5, and 16 plus 5 is 21. This is now in center radius form. So you could now tell me the center and the radius of this circle. So we know the center is going to be at 0, 4, because x squared is like saying x minus 0 squared. And then y minus 4, we said this is our k value. So we get 4 for our, we get 4 for the y value of our center. And then our radius is going to be the square root of 21. So we could take the square root of that number that it's equal to. In the second example, we just have a longer equation, and we're going to have to complete the square 2 times in this example. So the first thing we want to do is still get our constants to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides of my equation because it was being added originally. And I'm going to rewrite that as x squared plus y squared minus 2x plus 10y, those 13's are gone, equals negative 13. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is group my x's and y's. So I'm going to group in one set of parentheses x squared minus 2x, close parentheses. These are still bounds with addition though. In my other set of parentheses, I'm going to group y squared plus 10y. And that's still all equal to negative 13. All right, in the next step, we're going to complete the square of each, the x side and the y side, or the x squared minus 2x expression and the y squared plus 10y expression. So I'm going to move over since I know this will take up more room. So I have x squared minus 2x. To find my third term, I need to look at that negative 2. I'm going to divide it by 2. I'm going to get negative 1 when I do that. And then I'm going to square it. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So I'm going to add 1 to that expression. And then I'm going to do the same process with this next expression. So y squared, plus 10y. I'm going to take that 10, I'm going to divide it by 2, so I get 5, and then I'm going to square that number, and that's going to give me 25. All right, so I can't just add 1 and 25 without adding it to both sides. So on the right side of the equation, I'm also going to add 1 and 25 so that it's a balanced equation. All right, the last step is factoring. Factoring and simplifying the equation. So I'm going to factor the x parentheses first. So I take the square root of x squared, I take the square root of 1, and I take the sign in the middle. So I get x minus 1 squared. I keep my plus sign. Then I'm going to take the square root of y squared, the square root of 25, keep my sign in the middle. I get y plus 5 squared. And then all of that equals, let's see, negative 13 plus 1 would be negative 12. But then when I add negative 12 to 25, I get positive 13. So all of that equals positive 13. So lastly, if I asked you to find the center and radius you could do that now. The center is at 1, -5, and the radius is the square root of 13.